Welcome to The Atypical View. I'm your host, Lauren Florio, a licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in autism, ADHD, and broader neurodiversity. As a fellow neurodivergent mind, I'm here to help us learn and spread awareness on all things mental health, as well as help us unlearn harmful stereotypes by providing psychoeducation rooted in research and lived experience rooted in my atypical view. The Atypical View is obviously this podcast, but it's also my private practice where I provide therapy to clients here in California with me and provide neurodiverse coaching to others worldwide. So, without further ado, let's jump into the Atypical View. Hello and welcome back. Today's episode is going to be a little unique in that we're going to be talking about how to support dissociation through nervous system regulation. The general person needs to also know how to regulate their nervous system. So whether you identify with struggling with dissociation or not, today's episode is still a great way to learn some tips and tricks on how to show up for your nervous system differently and help yourself feel more regulated. Let's go ahead and jump into our first segment, which is our psychoeducation portion of today's episode. Let's jump into what dissociation is. I've mentioned before that dissociation is a spectrum. Dissociation can be understood as temporary disconnects from thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions, or even identity. Dissociation as a spectrum can be described as both how long you're in a dissociative episode for or period for. You could be dissociated, kind of disconnected for moments and be snapped out of it. You could be dissociated for hours or even days in severe cases. That's part of the spectrum. The other part of the spectrum is how dissociated we are. You could be dissociated for days, but you're more on autopilot, kind of nodding along, not really tuning into what's happening. Or you could be completely frozen, almost trapped in your head, really like blacking out and losing time. But I want to be clear that this is the nervous system's way of protecting us as a last-ditch effort. So when we experience something that feels too overwhelming to process in the moment, we can push it down. And if our body feels that we can't handle the distress, dissociation starts to begin as a survival response. It's not a flaw, but a protection in our body. And I've had people ask, if it's there to protect us, why would I want to stop? And the answer to that is because life is in the present moment. The expression of smell the roses is pretty literal to being present. We can't be present without being in our senses to be aware of what's happening around us. And we lose our life when we are in deep dissociation. So the answer of why would I want this to stop is because you deserve to have your life back. Our nervous system plays a central role in this process. There's a theory, it's called the polyvagal theory, that our body is continuously scanning for cues of, are we safe? Are we in danger? And when we experience chronic overwhelm, stress, trauma, sensory overload for our neurodiverse individuals, our nervous system starts to shift from into this shutdown, which is something we know well in the autistic experience, and this sort of freeze response. The trauma responses are fight or flight, we all know those, but there's also freeze or fawn. And the freeze response is heavily connected to a shutdown, heavily connected to dissociation, because sometimes we freeze because our body has determined that is the safest way to respond to danger. Like I mentioned, a lot of neurodiverse individuals may experience these freeze or autistic shutdowns. These states may occur more frequently than in the neurotypical body, especially when we consider the sensory overload, that chronic sensory overload, the social exhaustion, the emotional intensity that can come with a lot of these neurodiverse diagnoses. It can all activate the body's protective response, making it really difficult to remain present and connected, even when we want to. There's especially research that connects autistic and ADHD of individuals to dissociation, and obviously those with trauma histories as well. For autistic adults, especially late diagnosed ones, I often hear this being described as feeling disconnected to life, especially when we can sense a pattern that correlates to them struggling with overstimulation, social fatigue, or just being unsupported and eventually putting them in burnout. Burnout and dissociation tend to go hand in hand for my neurodiverse clients and myself. We also see a studied link between autism and alexithymia. You may have heard me talk about alexithymia before, and I genuinely believe that it deserves its own episode, but it's the difficulty in describing and identifying, feeling our emotions, body sensations. But alexithymia, wrapped up in a little bow for a definition, would be the difficulty of identifying or describing emotions. Alexithymia can contribute to dissociative experiences. And this overlap definitely notes that for many neurodiverse people, dissociation isn't just spacing out, but it's a nervous system adaptation to distress and overstimulation. There's also chronic invalidation in this experience and masking that contributes it. And frequently we hear, just try harder, just do more. And that just reinforces the cycle. When the nervous system is persistently pushed beyond its limits outside of what we call our window of tolerance, dissociation becomes a learned form of protection that is continuously happening, even on a low level. I hear a lot of clients go, I don't think I'm struggling with dissociation, only for them to talk to me a little bit more about their day-to-day routine and be able to spot the red flags of dissociation and better inform them of what's going on. I think a part of this overlap with neurodiversity and dissociation is because of the level of trauma that we tend to also see in overlap. We know that for the general public, trauma and dissociation are linked. And we see in a lot of neurodiverse populations that trauma and neurodiversity are also linked. Imagine being different your whole life. You're going to be isolated more, bullied more, picked on, left out. Those things, while smaller than the big T traumas that we might consider trauma to be, CPTSD is the chronic experience of smaller traumatic incidences that might feel less like a punch in the face and more like paper cuts happening over and over. So we've identified what dissociation is and we've understood its connection. Let's move into how we can even support dissociation. Many people know that mindfulness is inherently what supports dissociation. But the problem is that many people try to practice mindfulness and only end up more anxious, more nervous in their body. Imagine pulling back the veil of your trauma only to see everything's on fire, everything hurts, there's people screaming and running and yelling. It is not a peaceful place to enter the body. What do we do to fix that? Our support has to start in nervous system regulation. Mindfulness and grounding techniques, while they're absolutely clinically approved to manage dissociation, these practices can sometimes worsen anxiety or panic responses, especially if we attempt them when we're highly dysregulated. So before we can reconnect to the present moment and ground ourselves in the here and now, we have to start in nervous system regulation to even feel safe enough to do so. We're going to talk about gauging our dysregulation like a traffic stoplight. Imagine green as we're good to go. You might want to be checking your mirrors, but you're safe to drive. Yellow is we need to be prepared to stop. Maybe we need to slow down, but we might be able to cruise through the light safely. Red is we should not be driving anymore. We should be, if not stopping, fully stopped. We don't want to run a red light. That would be very dangerous. Our body needs to pause. When we're gauging these things, we're looking at being in the red means to be very dysregulated. The very top of the red is going to be in that full meltdown zone. Yellow is the further we're into yellow, the more dysregulated we are. But the early yellow is not necessarily a bad thing. A little bit of stress is not dangerous. We can handle a little bit of stress in our life. And green is we're good to go. We're smooth sailing. Honestly, we're probably chilling. We could take a nap. We could have a good time. This is the best place to be in, especially when we're trying to relax. So I want to be mindful that the techniques I'm going to share are more generalized. And when I work with clients one-on-one, I help them personalize their own coping skills for what works for them. And I have a whole other method and agenda to help us get there. But this model is, like I said, generalized, but pretty supportive based off of these red, yellow, or green levels of how dysregulated we are. We're going to introduce regulation tools. So when you want to attempt to regulate using the methods I'm talking about, First, check in with how dysregulated you are and identify its correlating stoplight color. And then if you're in the red, we'll start with step 1. If you're in the yellow, we'll start with step 2. And if you're in the green, you're going to be in step 3. Let's go over the steps together. Step 1 is red. These are distraction-based strategies. I would also argue these are what people are naturally really good at. The problem is that we as a society tend to pick distraction techniques that we get stuck in. It's not easy to step away from, such as scrolling on social media, maybe a marathon of our favorite TV show, or playing a video game, etc. When we're picking distraction-based strategies, we want to pick something that has a natural end. So we might want to call a trusted friend. As much as we could probably try to make that call last all day, chances are we're going to have to pull away eventually. Our friend's going to have to go on with their day. We're going to have to go on with ours. Call in, check in. You don't have to tell them that you're in a really bad space and you need support. You can just call in and say, I was thinking of you. I wanted to say hi. What's been going on with you today? Sometimes just hearing somebody else talk to us is inherently distracting enough to help ourselves naturally regulate just enough to get some control back. You can also try playing around with a fidget toy or something creative. Try drawing or painting, doing a puzzle, something that's going to engage your brain just enough and distract you just enough to support you. For the fastest technique that I have, try shocking your system with a piece of sour candy or popping an ice cube in your mouth. My favorite technique for home is making lemon ice cubes. It's not all lemon, it's like lemon and water, and I make little ice cubes. I pop it in my mouth. It's very cold, it's very sour, and it absolutely does the trick. But I like to keep pieces of candy, sour candy, scattered around to help me. Depending on how dysregulated you are, you might want to try 1 or 2 techniques. And again, we want to find things with a natural end. Once you feel like you've gotten your nervous system down just a bit, we're going to move to step 2. Step 2 is yellow. This is our somatic-based strategies. If you've heard my podcast on somatics, you know that we're talking about body-based regulation strategies. So as activation lowers, we're bringing a little bit more awareness into the body. We still don't want to go into our head and our mind just yet. We want to move where we have a little bit more control. We could try doing a firm pressure self-hug or have a firm pressure hug from a loved one. You can do that by wrapping your arms around yourself really tight, giving yourself a hug, and pulling in your elbows into your chest really tight, squeezing your arms really tight together, giving a lot of pressure and taking a big old deep breath as you do that. You might want to try putting on a song that you like to dance to and wiggle your body around. I really like the more we shake, the more our system gets regulated, but a good little wiggle or a dance that makes you happy is good as well. You could also try something simple like stretching your body out. You can look up approaches online or just sort of be intuitive and give it a try on your own. After you've done 1 or 2 techniques in this category, we're finally down to the green. This is the mindfulness and grounding-based strategies. This is the meat and potatoes of supporting dissociation. Once we have established nervous system regulation, grounding and mindfulness is now accessible. Some things we could try here is really anything we do to engage in our senses. I talked about this in a previous episode, but imagine starting with sight. You'll describe an object near you in a lot of detail, such as its colors, its patterns, its shape, its texture. I always give the advice of say either out loud or to yourself inside as if you're writing a book. Talk about it in a way that would provide so much detail that someone else there could picture it exactly as it is. Something else you could do is do something a little bit more textile. So you could go barefoot outside and genuinely just notice how the earth feels underneath your feet. A lot of people talk about how energetically that feels really good. It's called earthing. But just from a sense of a sensory perspective, we're being intentional about how the grass feels, how the mud feels, how the dirt feels. Yeah, it's a little messy, but you're going to notice the sensory experience. Plus, you're going to get some sunshine on your face, and that might feel good too. And lastly, I'm going to go over a technique as we transition into our next segment in just a moment, but understand that really anything mindful or grounding, there's a lot of techniques you can find online. YouTube has a lot of great resources. Really anything visualization focused or sensory focused is going to do you wonders here. Doing mindfulness practice, you might say, well, like, Lauren, I'm in the green. I already feel okay. Why would I continue to do the work here? The point of this is this helps keep us here. It helps keep us regulated. When we do mindfulness and grounding techniques more often, we're less likely to get back into the dissociative cycle. And the more frequently we can get ourselves to the green, practice mindfulness or grounding techniques, the less likely we will end up back in dissociation, the more we can start to break that cycle. And the more present we are, the more we can avoid new trauma from going unprocessed and handling things as they come in. I'm going to use this time to transition into our atypical view. The atypical view is where I share my story, my experience with today's topic. I will say I have struggled with dissociation very hard in my life. And really, a lot of these techniques were life-saving for me. I feel like there's so much I could share, but honestly, I feel like the best gift I could give you is to just go over some techniques that I feel like are effective for me. So I'll start with step 3, strategies. So that green category, that mindfulness and grounding based strategies. This is anything sensory related. So a lot of us with sensory seeking toys, this would be a great thing to try. Maybe a scented candle that you like, an aromatherapy that you like. I'm going to explain something called diaphragm breathing. It's so simple, but it's so effective. And I know that if my younger self heard someone tell me, like, we're going to practice breathing and it's going to change your life, like, I would literally already be clicking off the podcast. But hear me out, because this is not the same as just take some deep breaths. Everything's going to be okay. I like diaphragm breathing for 2 reasons. One, it quite literally does shift our nervous system. When we activate diaphragm breathing, we are triggering the rest and digest part of our nervous system, which is the side we want to be in to be calm and centered and regulated. The kind of like fight or flight side, the really stressed out side, has breathing where it's higher up in our chest. Our muscles are a little bit more tight and we're breathing shallow breaths into our chest. Diaphragm breathing is going to be slow and into our stomach. Come along with me, give it a try. Place one hand on your chest and place one hand on your stomach. I find this exercise to be the easiest when laying down, but if you're in a chair, just lean back as much as you can, be supported. Close your eyes, and I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Now notice which hand is moving. If it's the hand on your chest, our nervous system might not be in the relaxed rest and digest side of things. If it's the hand on your stomach, congrats. You are in a more regulated state in your nervous system. So how do we switch it over? What we don't want to do is we don't want to push out our stomach and force our stomach to move. Instead, I sometimes find that trying to keep your chest hand still automatically kind of slows the breathing just enough to have it push down into our stomach. We don't want the muscles in our stomach to be pushing and contracting. We want the air to pass our chest, go all the way down to our stomach, and our stomach naturally expand and fall. This can take some getting used to if you've never done it before. It can be tricky. Take some slow breaths. Really long and slow. Imagine the air moving up through your nose, down your throat, past your chest and lungs, and into your belly. And imagine your belly like a balloon. That air has to fill up. And then imagine the balloon slowly letting the air out, coming up, passing your chest, going up your throat, out your mouth. Good job. Try a couple more breaths and see if you can get your lower belly hand to move, and by keeping your chest hand still. This is one of my favorite exercises. It's super low effort. I can do it anywhere, and it makes a really big difference for me. I like to do maybe 3 or 4 deep breaths when I can, but the more, the better. But it's important for you to find the techniques that work for you. Now, mind you, again, if you're not in the green zone and we're attempting these, it's not going to feel good. But if you're in the green and you found that these just weren't your thing, understand that there are still techniques out there for you. You can meditate, you can do a visualization, you can go out and look at the clouds and feel the sun on your skin, focus on sensory experience. There's so many things that you can do that aren't some like clinical exercise even. But the more we can connect that mind-body experience, the less dissociated we will be. And so we will transition into our final segment today, which is our call to action segment. Understand that it can be very scary to start to work on dissociation. Dissociation is this protective factor, and if we've experienced a lot of trauma, trying to get into your body safely can feel like a impossible mission. But understand that slow and steady attempts to regulate, show up for yourself, show up for your nervous system, and not continue to contribute to the overwhelm that your body is running from will make a difference in the end. You deserve to have peace in your body, whether you're dealing with pain management, whether you're dealing with trauma, whether you're dealing with sensory overwhelm, whatever it is that your body is trying to protect you from, there is a way to find peace on the other side. I really encourage you to find one technique in each of these categories, one red, one yellow, and one green technique that you can rely on and depend on and to lean on as you try to navigate managing your own nervous system and managing dissociative symptoms. Give it a try. See how you feel. The more you can get comfortable with a technique, the more you're going to be likely to actually use it. So pick one, write it down, and try it every day, even if you don't feel like you need it. Practice really does make a big difference in the grand scheme of things. And if you're sitting there going, Lauren, I'm dissociated, I'm not going to remember to do this, set alarms in your phone. I set 3 alarms a day when I was first trying to navigate dissociation. Set some alarms on your phone to check in where you're at and practice a couple of those skills. I genuinely hope that this works for you. I hope that you can get some relief from the dysregulation and from the dissociation. And I appreciate your desire to learn and grow. So thank yourself for showing up today, and good luck. Thanks for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it, subscribe, leave a comment or a review, or send it to someone who might benefit from the psychoeducation, or just need a little reminder that they are not alone. If you are interested in my coaching or therapy services, you can reach out to me directly and connect with me at theatypicalview.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and I hope we can stay connected.